Hello everyone, I am Brad Tompkins and I want to welcome you to Season 2 of Your Tech, Your Voice. Today we are in the nation's capital for the United States, Washington, D.C. And with me I have Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and the organization you work for.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Sarah Reidy. I'm the Director of Information Technology for PAI. PAI is a nonprofit organization with a global reach. We've been around for almost 60 years. We advocate for universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. We do this through advocacy, partnering, and funding our change makers. We work with about 125 civil society funded partners in 36 countries, and we've got a staff of about 40.
Wow, that's fantastic. Sounds like a great organization.
Yeah.
We're going to learn more about it throughout today. But doing research, I noticed that you have been in this role for 36 years, and what's fascinating to me about that is the amount of experience that you have at one organization. So many IT professionals out there, they'll change jobs and have better opportunities, and that's the path they've taken. But tell me about your experience being with one company with all the changes that we've had in IT over the past 3+ decades.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I started here almost straight out of college as just a data operator entry person. I learned a lot from the person who was my manager. I also learned about this organization, which is just very, very important to me, and they've always been very supportive of me. They've supported me through my professional growth, through the birth of my son in 1993, and they're always open to me learning and bringing in new technology, and I'm very, very curious. So it's been great to grow with this organization, and I feel that it's just been a real unique experience for me. I can't imagine anything else.
That's great. So you were telling me about when you started moving up in the IT ranks, and I know you've been in this position for about 12 years, and you were telling me about the project when you're like, we need to standardize on technology.
Yeah.
Walk me through like what triggered that and what kind of stats. I think it's great that you kind of did some stats before the move and after the move, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for a long time, bringing computers into the office was more of like, what do you want to use? What were you used to using? So there was, HP, Compaq, Dell, there was Windows, there was Apples, and so along with that was, 20 different ways to troubleshoot, 20 different vendors to call. It was a lot of time. And so I sat down and thought there has to be a better way that has to be more efficient for both me and the staff. So we did a survey, and the survey underscored that, there was some dissatisfaction with staff. They were frustrated, I was frustrated. So what do we do about that? How do we make that better? And I sat down and I talked to my executive team and I said, look, standardization is a way to go. People know what to expect. I know what to do. We set up configurations. So you find a vendor who works with you and everybody saves time. And for a nonprofit, that's key. You want your people working on the work, not working on their computers, so to speak. So we looked at a lot of different vendors. I have a lot of colleagues that I talk to, and Dell consistently came up as one who is reliable and one who has, great communication with their user base. So we decided to standardize on Dell. So after standardizing on Dell, we did another survey 12 months later, and staff satisfaction rose to 85%.
Wow, that's impressive.
To this day, we've stayed consistently at or above 95% staff satisfaction, which is huge. It's great for my staff, it's great for me.
Yes, and it's nice to be able to have that standardization. Like you said, it's great for your staff from a troubleshooting perspective. Yes. But in this environment now where, we're 2 years into the pandemic and, finding people for employment, they look at what kind of technology are you going to provide to me to work. They want the flexibility to work wherever, and of course your company, people are working all over the globe. That really allows companies to get better employees, and I think this is panning out, and for you to be able to say this is our level of satisfaction is tremendous for an organization like this.
Yeah, and I'll say that when COVID lockdown was called, we were able to pivot in 2 days to work 100% remote from home. And most of that 2 days was making sure staff had the right equipment to take home with them, with maybe a couple of support calls about internet connection. But the Dell equipment always worked.
So you're a nonprofit, so how does Dell work with nonprofits and what are the benefits there?
Yeah, they are very generous with us. I have an assigned account rep. I always know who my account rep is, and whoever that is calls us very consistently to check on what we need. Anytime that I need equipment, whatever it is, they work with us, and I tell them this is what I can afford. Sometimes I'm a little over, sometimes a little under, but they work very, very hard to make sure that they can provide us with equipment we need within the budget we have.
So let's talk a little bit about that equipment. In the Dell client community, we love the big stories, but we also like to geek out a little bit. So tell me about what a typical configuration is.
Right. For now, 75% of my staff, they have the Dell XPS 13. And the reason we chose that laptop was when it first came out 10, 11 years ago, we hopped on that model, and it has been great for our staff that travel. It's dependable, it's sturdy, they don't have any problems with it, and when you're overseas somewhere, 12 hours in a different time zone from me, you don't want any problems. So we pretty much standardized on Dell XPS 13 for people who wanted laptops in the office. I would say until about 5 years ago, we had a mix of desktops, Optiplex, and the Latitudes, the XPS 13s for our staff members. I love the Optiplex 7440 all-in-one. I still have my original one. It's getting a little long in the tooth, but it still works for me. It's what's
Still
on my
working.
desk. Yeah, it's what's on my desk right now. So yeah, very, very happy with our staff equipment.
That's great. And that XPS 13 is so lightweight,
Yeah.
and it's great for travel. I mean, you can fit that thing in a purse, in a small bag, a carry-on. I mean, it can go anywhere.
It can, the lightweight part is important, but the dependable part for us is just as important, because it's not like somebody's going on vacation to travel. They're doing work, and sometimes they're doing it in some challenging environments. So it's really important that that equipment works every time.
And you mentioned, some of them have been working for years and years, and for a nonprofit, that's great.
Yes.
And I noticed that PAI has a top rating from the American Institute of Philanthropy and Charity Navigator, and that 80 cents of every dollar for your organization goes to critical programs. That's tremendous.
Yeah, it does. And part of my job is to look at the funding that we get and be a very intentional steward of those people that support us. So standardizing on Dell was important for me, and it's very, very much key in doing this for PAI. If I can have a laptop that lasts 3, 4, 5 years instead of 2 or 3 years, that's great. That really helps a lot.
And the funding that your organization gets, you were telling me that it's never funding, hey, go upgrade your infrastructure. It's project-based, and so
Yes.
talk about how you navigate that and still able to give people what they need out in the field.
Right. For the most part, funders will fund projects, which is how most nonprofits are funded. And there is overhead funding, but it's just a proportion of the overall funding. And I would say most of our funding is, 14, 15% is overhead. So you have to work your budget to fit within that 14 to 15% overhead. Everything you do, salaries, equipment, and work. And it's just important. The consistency within Dell is not just the equipment, but also the pricing model. So we know what to expect. And that as well is really important as we're starting to budget, for example, for next year. We know what to expect as far as our equipment expenditures will be.
So how many people are in your IT department?
There's 2 of us, myself and my manager of IT. He started as an intern, and I was lucky enough to be able to hire him to come on full term. But we do have interns from time to time as well.
So 2 full-time staff, you've
Yep.
got laptops all over the globe. From a service perspective, how does that work? How do you make sure that things,
Yeah.
stuff's going to happen.
Yep.
Equipment's going to need to be repaired. So how do you navigate through that?
So just to say first off, I have to admit we don't have too many service calls for Dell equipment. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that too often. But when there is issues, they're very, very responsive, and we can actually have them call the end user if they're the ones working from home that has the problem. And the technicians with the support we have, they come right to where the equipment is. So it's never really been a problem.
That's great. All right, so obviously you're a female in IT, and that's fantastic. And we are always trying to figure out how can we get more diversity, especially in IT. And it's International Women's Day coming up next month, March 8th.
Yep.
So tell me about your experience, being a woman in IT. You started here as a data entry operator, and now you're running the department, which is a great story. But talk a little bit about your experience with being a woman in IT.
I would say that I have made some really good connections, networks, and colleagues. I've never felt that I was a duck out of water. And I'm a curious person. And I think for anyone, male or female, for anyone who's curious, this is a great career to be in. You can be curious all the time. You can learn all the time. And for me, that was always really, really important. Ask the questions. Don't feel stupid about asking questions, because the only bad question is the one not asked. That's the way I look at it. And if I have a question, other people have questions. So I would say being a woman in IT has been interesting in some respects, but I've had a very good experience. I've had good mentors, I've had good colleagues, and I have great friends in IT. I recommend it to anyone.
That's great. That's great. Tell me a little bit about PAI. If somebody is interested in learning more about your organization, how can they help? What are some of the topics that y'all are trying to educate people on?
Yeah, so first off, visit our website, PAI.org. We welcome anybody who wants to help us advocate through better policy, or if they want to take time to make a donation, that's just great. How we like to work is partnering, and that's the basis of all we do, which is very important to me as well. When you partner with somebody, you're not saying, this is how you should do it, I want you to do it this way. It doesn't matter what your conditions are, what you're facing, this is how you're going to do it. That rarely works, because your solution is not somebody else's solution. And I find that works very similarly in the world of IT. I can't tell you how to solve your problem unless I listen to you. So a lot of our work deals with finding partners on the ground in different countries, talking to them about, okay, what are the challenges that you're facing when you're advocating for women and girls to have the access that they need to control their own lives? Because if you can control your own life, if you have the ability to choose what's best for you, you're going to do better, your community's going to do better, and everybody's going to do better. So that's really the basis for how we work. And it's been a phenomenal place to work in that respect. I've met some of the most interesting, wonderful, intelligent people, and that's why I've stayed so long. What we do is so important, especially to me as a woman. But for the entire world, it's not just women that are impacted. If women don't have access, if they don't have access and they can't work, that affects their entire community, their family, and themselves. So it's been a wonderful place to work.
All right, so your IT environment, talk to me a little bit more. I know you're using Dell client on the end user side, but what's the rest of your environment like?
Right, so my infrastructure is standardized as well on Dell. So we became fully virtualized about 8 years ago on VMware, and we have in our infrastructure our Dell PowerEdge servers, and then I still have my storage appliance, my original one from 10 years ago, my Dell PowerVault, but we have 2 additional newer ones, of course, because even though that one's the end of life, he's still working.
There you go.
Still in there. So my infrastructure is very dependable. I don't think I've ever had anything other than a call into support to apply, for example, firmware updates. That's pretty much been it. So again, very dependable, no problems, which is great when you're a very small IT office.
Yeah, you're running lean, and it's great to have that equipment that's reliable, and the partnership between VMware and Dell is strong, and there's a lot of benefits there.
Oh, I love it. I'm sort of sad that they seem to be parting ways, but I know that the relationship is still going to be there, and both VMware and Dell especially have been great partners for my organization in what we have to do in IT.
Yeah, and that happened toward the end of last year, and of course, Michael and Pat were like, everything's going to be the same, and I'll say that has been the experience.
Yes.
And of course, Michael Dell's still the chairman of the VMware Board of Directors, so that's obviously a tight relationship.
I think that it was the fact that VMware and Dell were so well partnered when we first started work, and they still are, that's what made a big difference to our infrastructure. We were fully virtualized before a lot of my colleagues in the nonprofit world. I was actually very proud of. I would say it was, 7 years ago we were fully virtualized. So we went from 3, almost 4 full racks of equipment to 1.5. I have 1 full rack and maybe half a rack, and that's it. And that's just, from the scale of economy for ITs, that's really important as well. I have more room in my LAN room.
There you go. So what would you like to tell your peers in the Dell client community out there that's listening to this? What advice would you give them?
Let's say get involved. The Dell community has been great. For example, during the pandemic, I attended quite a few of the presentations that Dell had, webinars, informative webinars, and you never know how those are going to go online, but they were great. They were interactive. Just get involved in the community. You meet some of the most wonderful people. You become part of something that is really growth on both sides. You're exchanging information, and everybody's learning, and it's a wonderful experience.
And technology, as we know, it changes so fast, and now it seems like it's even more accelerated with everything that's going on with the cloud, and then you throw in the pandemic, and it's a lot to keep up with. And I think leaning on peers is key. We all have that one thing that ties us together, and that's technology.
Yep.
And we all want to use it the best we can and learn how to use it in different ways. So that's great advice, getting involved. And the Dell client community is a great place to do that.
And I think what made me feel the happiest was I used to do a lot of the calls myself, asking for help. Then when I started getting the calls, I'm like, hey, this is great.
Giving back.
I'm giving back now. So yeah, that was, it's always give and take, and it's a wonderful experience. I love it.
Fantastic. So the XPS 13s, you're standardized on those, and we talked about how they're lightweight and they work out well. How did you get to that decision? Did you just go straight to Dell?
No, before we standardized on Dell, we have staff that travel all over the world to visit our partners in country. And before we standardized on Dell, we had Dell and 2 or 3 other manufacturers of laptops we sent out with our staff. I never had any calls or reports of problems with the Dell laptops. I did, however, have problems with the other laptops. One even was left behind. Staff are stressed out enough when they're overseas trying to take care of all the details that they need to take care of, and that's one that I don't want them to have. Mm-hmm. So after a couple of trips when that happened, we decided we're only going to send Dell laptops out.
Because the reliability was there.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing that these are going to remote locations. It's not like there's a repair shop on the corner.
No. They will fly into, capital cities, but oftentimes the people that they're visiting are in places an hour or 2 away from anything. So they're lucky if they can even plug in to recharge.
Wow, so they're really remote.
Yeah.
And that's just even more important for the equipment to work like it should when it needs to work.
Yeah.
That's great. So Sarah, this organization you work for is great. Tell us a little bit about the history and kind of the evolution of PAI.
Yeah, so basically we've always been here to advocate for girls and women's access to controlling their own reproductive health. It was founded in 1965, and when I started in 1985, there were about 20 of us. And a lot of what we do now is what we've always been doing, advocating for better policy and funding and access, and working with partners in country. I would say how we do our work hasn't changed as much as just expanding how much we're doing that work. So a hallmark of our work is always working with our partners in country, trying to push out the access and the knowledge that will, let them have the ability to do what they need to do in country.
Great. So your organization works with partners in country, and sometimes your employees will go and help those partners, but then those partners out in the community educate women and men too, everybody on, hey, these are the options that you have, so they have the knowledge to make better life decisions?
Yes, but more importantly, they're working with the parliamentarians in their country to advocate for better policy and funding within their own country. So it's very strategic partnerships. It's not that the partners and I are working and pushing things, we're working together, I guess. It's really important to understand that it is a partnership, that it's not an organization coming in to show people how to do what they need to do.
Got it. So you take, they know the local area, so
They know their needs, yeah.
they know their needs, and you
Yeah.
just help fulfill the needs. And I would imagine that's on an individual level, but also, like you said, on a higher government level,
It's
parliamentary level.
more than, it's not so much on an individual level as it is on working with partners to advocate with their governments.
Got it.
And
Well,
it's a
that's
lot
great.
of civil societies that we work with as partners.
Well, that's very good. I mean, it's kind of making change at the highest level
Yeah.
that can affect things for generations to come.
Yeah, we have fantastic partners. Just honored to work with them.
That's awesome. All right, so you've been a Dell customer for a while. What kind of advice would you give Dell?
So one of the things I love about Dell is whether I'm talking to a support tech about implementing a new hypervisor in VMware, configuring a storage appliance, or even just repairing a failed laptop. It's a learning experience, and it's a wonderful learning experience. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if Dell took all of this learning material? I mean, I know I can go online and search for and find whatever I need, but if intentionally built this learning experience where anybody, anywhere in the world could find all this just great information. Dell is very generous in their support techs. I have a ticket open with somebody, I can call that fellow 2 months later and he'll spend half an hour on the phone with me. It's a great learning experience, and I'd love for more people to have that. So I just think maybe if Dell did a little more around their learning experience, it'd be great. With a great technology partner like Dell, it's made a big difference. It allows us to what we call power shift. And power shift just means you take what you have and you push it out to other people, and you just magnify that effect, and it empowers everybody. So if I have the stuff I need to do, if I can control what I need to do, I can make my own decisions.
Well, it sounds like good advice, and people are always interested in learning more. And you put that stuff online, and it allow everybody across the globe to kind of raise the level of the whole IT industry.
That's right.
Great advice. Sarah, thanks so much for being on the program today and sharing your experiences.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Your tech, your voice.
If you'd like to be featured on Your Tech, Your Voice, or learn more about Dell Client Communities, you can do that at dellclientcommunities.com.